Hi, everyone. This is Caroline Griffin. I am the Events and Operations Manager for RIoT. Thank you all for joining us today. This is RIoT 47, and we're excited to have Desmond Wiggan here from BatteryXchange, as well as his partner, Aubrey. You can't see Aubrey, but I guarantee you he is there for this intimate conversation. Just a quick reminder before we get started. All of you are on mute, but if you have any questions, I encourage you to please use the Q&A box or the chat box. We will make sure all of your questions are answered at the end of the presentation. This will be recorded and posted on RIoT's YouTube channel, so no worries if you have to leave early. You can check out this presentation later. Without further ado, I will go ahead and get started, introduce RIoT's Executive Director, Tom Snyder, who will then introduce Desmond. Thank you all for joining.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, and thanks to everyone for joining us. For those who have known RIoT in the past, we're a technology-forward organization focused on economic development, but we think about economic development not only as working with folks to create jobs and to create companies, which we do a lot in that space, but also a lot around building community and the interconnectedness of everything that we do in our lives, our personal networks, our professional networks, our business networks and colleagues, how do all of these things come together to create healthy and thriving economies? And I'm really excited today to have Desmond Wiggan on our program for a conversation, and Aubrey of OES will also bring you in for some Q&A a little bit later. So thanks to you both for being here. Desmond, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll give a little bit of background on our relationship as well.
Yeah, totally. So I think I said it on LinkedIn, but I was excited for this conversation because I do consider you guys as family. Just kind of going through the accelerator firsthand. I've always been an advocate for the RIoT program and love every one of you guys. So and you've done a lot for me and then just BatteryXchange. But my name is Desmond Wiggan. I'm the co-founder of BatteryXchange, but I'm also a husband, a son. I'm expecting, so we have a child coming in August. So a lot of things going on with that. But I'm also like a global econ nerd. I love culture. I've traveled a lot throughout my, I guess, my career or my life. First generation American, so my family's from the Caribbean. So I carry that with me as well. And just a real advocate for getting, changing the narrative for African Americans or people that look like me in technology, because obviously we know the percentages and we know the support, and I'm pretty sure we'll talk about that. But that's a little bit about me, and then that's kind of how me and Aubrey formed the company of BatteryXchange. Is more so of having that community feel, the interconnectedness that you said in reference to RIoT as well, but just kind of building something that we could, in essence, in either give off to our families, our legacy, build that out, but also just inspire the next generation. I think, one of the things that we always talk about is, in our communities, a lot of times individuals see like the sports stars and those individuals, and they like, man, I want to be like that. Like our hope is for individuals to see us in the tech space, not just raising capital, but influencing lives, connecting people, and say like, hey, I want to be like those BatteryXchange guys. So that's kind of what we've been building over the last almost 2 years now.
I love that as a goal and an objective. So again, for the audience, what we want to do, we'll touch a little bit on BatteryXchange for those that don't know Desmond's company. RIoT first met Desmond and Aubrey in the accelerator program that we run. They came through our program, did a fantastic job, and since then they have taken an idea that they had been working on, first in China and then here in the United States. They've built it, they've piloted it, they've successfully raised money. We'll talk about that a little bit, but we also want to dig into not just who they are in their company, but the challenges that they faced as Black founders launching a company, the things that are kind of the intersection of their personal and professional journeys and some of the national conversations that we're having right now. And we encourage everybody in the audience to, chime in, as Caroline said, in the chat box with your questions, with your comments, with your thoughts. We want to have a series of these conversations as we think about what can we do better in our communities? What can we do better as RIoT? What can I do better as Tom Snyder in making sure that everyone has opportunities and that the vision that Desmond just described can come true, or we can inspire this generation and the next generation. So with that, let's start just with a little bit of baselining about just who the company is for those that may not be familiar with BatteryXchange.
Yeah, totally. So, like Tom said, me and my co-founder Aubrey, who's on the line, we started it in China, and really ran into an inconvenience of, I think everybody's always out and about. We're always, for us, we're tweeting, we're on social media, we're emailing, connecting with our loved ones, and we were kind of out all day, and just ran into that inconvenience of having a low and dead battery. Literally, both of our batteries were like below 5%, and there just wasn't a convenient way for us to charge our phone. We didn't have time to sit around the outlet. And so we started to challenge the narrative, like, why isn't there more convenience, or why isn't there something that's out there that allows people to be mobile? And so in essence, went back that night, fast forward, built up what we have now, which is BatteryXchange, which is an on-demand rental platform for portable batteries. To give reference, it's similar to like the scooter concept that you see. I'm pretty sure they have it in Raleigh or wherever you're at, to where you can rent a product for a particular time and then, keep it for as long as you want, and, return it when you're finished. And literally that's the same thing that we do with portable batteries that are compatible with each and every cell phone or IoT devices on the market. And individuals use our application, they rent the portable battery, and then they just drop it off to one of our kiosk machines. And these kiosk machines, we actually just got new ones, we're super excited about. But these are also a form of information and communication to businesses, to consumers, to attendees at different events. And so that's kind of what we built over the last year, partnered with over 20 plus events, anywhere from DC to Miami with the Super Bowl most recently. And then obviously COVID hit us, and we kind of had to figure out. So what we've been really working on now is the bar space. We feel like that's probably going to be one of the areas that pretty much opens up most first. And then as events kind of start to open up and stuff, we'll start to partner with them as well. But that's kind of who we are in a nutshell.
Well, thanks. I don't have a polling function on the call, but I'll bet if we polled the audience, every single one would say at some point in their life they've had battery anxiety around that phone almost dying. I know I've certainly been in that case, and as we become more and more dependent on our phones for things like a ride home on an Uber or something, what you're providing is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, battery anxiety is a real thing. I mean, there's literally statistics out there, and I think we talked about this as well. But I think one of the things when we were doing like customer discovery, this this woman that was a mother talked about a situation where she couldn't get in touch with her daughter that was at the mall, and it was just like, man, that anxiety and that worry, we would never want any parent or anybody to kind of go through that. So in a security measure or even extreme measure, like, it's just, who wants to be inconvened, So we all run into it.
Yeah. So tell us, when is it that you knew you were an entrepreneur, or did you know? Was it a conscious decision to try something? Even the idea of going and living in China for a while is a pretty uncommon decision for somebody to make, right? So give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you found yourself in this position.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm first generation American. So my family comes from Jamaica, and it's something me and Aubrey joke about as well, because his family's from Africa. It's kind of that feeling of like, you have to be the one to make it. You have to be the one to build something, to continue that legacy. And so for me, I consider myself like third generation entrepreneur, because my dad, he has a finance company, and I see him build that up. I see my mom support him, and I saw that he was able to be at, like, I ran track and field all the way through college, and he was always able to be there, most times, just simply because he was in control of his schedule for the most part. And so that was really huge for me, because family is important. And then just really learning about my grandparents as well. They were entrepreneurs, not by choice, but by circumstance. Unfortunately got laid off, my granddad, and like had to figure it out. And so he became a provider for not only like his family, but his community as well. So when you start to hear those things, it's just like, man, what can I do for my generation or my, network or my family. And so, I graduated from Winston-Salem State, business management. Initially thought, hey, I'm gonna do like the whole corporate thing. So I did that for a while. And then that bug just hit me as just far as like, man, I think I could do things more efficiently. I built a fintech application. Then I wanted to do some stuff in Jamaica. So I started a logistics company. So I was always trying stuff. And, throughout that time, I kind of got to the point to where I felt like I wanted to give more to the world in my corporate environment. And it just wasn't giving me that. I was just like, man, I got to go full fledged with this whole entrepreneurial thing. And in essence, I also wanted to travel and see the world. And that's what kind of led me out to China. I was looking for MBA programs that specifically would allow me to, study in abroad. And then I saw what China was doing within technology, and I was just like, man, they're just like, that's the place to be. Like, there's so much more that you could learn. And then my wife and my parents probably still think I'm crazy because I didn't know anybody. I didn't speak the language, but there was just something that was pulling me. And I was just like, man, I need to go. So I had just proposed to my, well, now wife, and then we got married at the courthouse, did a small ceremony, and then literally booked off to China and just immersed myself. And I think throughout that time and just kind of building relationships, we call it guanxi in China, and that's just like building the network. I started to see like this whole startup world, this like ecosystem. Like I started working for a firm where I was working in between Shanghai and Beijing, and that's like the number 2 and 4 ecosystem in the world. And it was just like, man, there's just these amazing ideas just kind of cultivating, and people are just doing some really, really impactful things and just building again a legacy that goes to like my individual core mission. And it was just like, man, in order for me to get there, I got to dive into this. So, me and Aubrey kind of coming up with the idea and just kind of figuring it out made sense. But there was a lot of risk taken just to get out there, really.
Absolutely. How would you compare the entrepreneurial ecosystem, maybe in attitude and just culture and collaboration and so on in China to that here in the U.S. now that you've been back in the U.S. for a while?
Yeah, I don't think we take as many chances, obviously, as China. We are there, like literally. I've been in areas to where, like, I'm in the first tier of the Shanghai's, but I've been in the most ruralist parts of China as well. And everybody is just like trying to get their hands on the newest technology, and it's just a culture, and like everybody is just trying to use it and utilize it. And literally, these individuals don't even have a nice house, or they don't even have like everybody, like there's like 10 people living in their house, like they don't even have the luxuries. But for them, it's just like if they get, more innovation and more, access to technology, like they're advancing their lives, their mentality and stuff like that. So honestly, wherever you went throughout all of China, there was just this culture of not being scared. I think a lot of things in the US, we're scared of everything. I mean, like I was setting up an account the other day, and like my friend was just like, yeah, be careful in this. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen to people, but the likelihood of it is just really small. And I feel like that deters us here for trying new things. And again, that deters us from being more innovative than I think we can be. And I see these other countries, like I study, China, what they're doing in Tel Aviv, just other countries. And it's just like, man, they're really, I feel like we still have a somewhat of a lead, but they're catching up. And if not, in some areas, they're a little bit more advanced than us because of our mentality and our fear when it comes to innovation and technology.
It's really interesting, particularly when you talked about getting into some of those smaller communities. You know the phrase, necessity breeds invention, or something close to that, if that's not the exact phrase. But we, about a couple of years ago, I guess now 2 years ago, decided that we really wanted to start focusing a lot more RIoT's attention in smaller communities, and we've put a lot of focus in Wilson, North Carolina, where there is a huge entrepreneurial energy, but it's not in every community like a Wilson that we necessarily see that immediate draw towards technology as a component. And it sounds like you really saw that in China. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and exposure too. Like I'm guessing, I forgot where Wilson is at, but they may be close to a big city. Like a lot of the towns in America, like so the program we went into for our MBA program had a partnership with a school out of Kansas, and we would go to the rural environments where like I mean, the whole like Walmart is like the mall type of thing, but even smaller than that, like one stoplight, like they just don't have access to things. And like their current demands don't say, I need technology right now. It's like a lot of farming land and different things like that. So I think the more opportunities for bringing these innovative ideas or like accelerator programs to those rural environments, you'll see a progression. And then honestly, they'll bring that other side of like knowing how to work hard, because I think that's another side when we talk strictly about entrepreneurship that is needed. Like you got to have a work ethic that is just different. And you know, a lot of individuals that come from corporate they can't really make that change completely because they're used to just things being easy or things being already outlined. I could associate somebody, again, I'm just talking about like this one situation, but somebody coming from like a farm and just like really having that work ethic of just like staying up late, putting in the work, getting all the insight, and you know, just doing the research and doing all those type of things that are needed in order to like get to the next level. But not everybody has that.
Yeah. So we ask, and this might be something you answer more retroactively because I don't know if it was your initial intent or not, but right now there's been a lot of discussion around the challenges for African American founders, and we can dig into some of these in detail. But you know, the world has been stacked against female founders, minority founders, folks with disabilities, veterans. You know, there's lots of categories of folks for which there just aren't the same opportunities that there are for folks like myself that are privileged white males. Having kind of started your entrepreneurial journey, at least the BatteryXchange piece of it, in China versus the US, you know, how do you think you might have been successful or not successful starting here versus there? Kind of, did you see those same kind of challenges and biases in that environment that maybe we see here in the United States?
I didn't in China because I was always like one of the only Americans, right? So like, and then let alone a Black American. And so I think there was always this natural attraction of like, you know, either I want to get to build a relationship with them, because I associated it different. I just thought about it as like a ignorant, you know, child. It's just like, man, I want to know about this. And so the stares and just different things like that was just something that you kind of had to deal with because I wasn't something that was normal. But as far as like building relationships, I think it was a little, for me personally, and everybody, you know, has different experiences. I felt like it was a little bit easier over there because I was kind of like a standout. On being here and trying to, you know, build those same relationships, I think is a bit difficult. And one of the things that in the Black culture we grow up with is like, I have to be like 2 times better than the people in my neighborhood or people in my community, but I have to be like 5 times better than an individual that doesn't look, or yeah, that doesn't look like me, in order to just be on the same playing field. And so when you walk and like, you know, grow up with that mentality, it's just like, it's kind of like the society is telling me like I'm never going to be good, even though me and this guy that doesn't look like me, that's a white, you know, founder, may have the same education, may come from the same economical background, whatever it is. And so like it's always that edge of like, man, I'm always having to prove myself. And I feel like I was fortunate to have like that, you know, international business experience, because that did give me opportunities to where people just say, oh man, this guy's a little bit different, or he may know something, whether I did or didn't. It's just because it was just a check off of a box. And like I see other founders struggle with building relationships because subconsciously, when individuals walk in the room and like you get into these conversations, like we're just sizing people up, we're judging people. I think about it all the time, sadly, when I'm going into like a pitch, like because we, you know, and it's just like you go into a room and it's just like a bunch of white dudes, or like typically, you know, 90% of the time is that. And it's just like, not only do I have to like prove myself, but I have to overcome these barriers of like, man, is this guy like this other Black guy that I know, you know, or, you know, maybe he isn't going to be this or whatever. And it's all these different things that I feel like the thing is like it's unsaid, but there's an energy that you feel like, and it sucks. And it's quite difficult. And those are, and that's like, before you even pitch, right? That's before you even present yourself or before you even speak. Like there's all these things that happen before you even get a chance to say, this is who I am and this is what I know because of the color of my skin. And like that's just like one off of the things that like are just the difficulties that we face. And then just to kind of go on another standpoint is just like I think the network is another thing because all like from what I see, and again I'm a little bit different because like I try to go in opportunities and not be the stranger type of thing and like really really personable, but not everybody's like that. Some people are introverts, and you know sometimes again with that introvert mentality, and then you know just being a minority founder, like you're never gonna get that. There's always I don't know, like I'm in conversations all the time with people that I may know on LinkedIn or something like that. And it's just like, it's this awkward uncomfortability because there's no relatability. And I just feel like every time that you get into a conversation that with somebody that you don't know, you should try to eradicate all those barriers or those preconceived opinions about this individual because of what they look like or where they come from, and just start fresh because on the same standpoint, a lot of things that I see, and I'm gonna just throw this out, but it's not, you know, don't take it to heart, but like, you know, a white founder from Carolina or from Duke or something like that, they automatically get the nod, right? And it's just like, man, they might not even be as hard of a worker, as smart as like the other individual, but it's just like the way it is, and it's just, but you know that, and these are all the things that just kind of happen before we initially have this conversation. Now, I know that was a lot, but sometimes I get to running a little
No,
bit.
no, I mean, this is all really, really good conversation. I've probably got 100 different questions, but let me start with like, at what point did you realize this? You know, is this something that, you know, you're 4 or 5 years old and you're already seeing all this, or just, you know, when is that deep understanding of some of the stuff you just described really set in? Just for folks that, you know, don't
Um,
have that experience to really understand.
yeah, I think like so. I'm from New York originally. I was born in New York. I grew up in Charlotte, and I think that culture and you know diversity is a lot more prominent up there. So for me, it maybe came a little bit later. Honestly, when I came down, maybe when I came down, maybe I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I feel like the innocence of a child is something that they kind of don't see. And like I know a lot of people say I don't see color, but I don't believe that because naturally we just do. But children really don't care. Like literally, we just moved into this neighborhood. There's a white like you know young girl, and she came over and just like was so like open, and it was just like I know her mom looked at it and was just like, man, like I wish I could do that, you know, and like that softened the relationship with her mom. But I think it just comes when we go to school, and we start to see that, you know, maybe yeah, like people just come from different backgrounds and have different opportunities and different experiences. I think definitely on like a middle school level, when you start to see like, well, I'm just gonna say a name. This doesn't mean anything, but Johnny, like his mom, you know, brings him to school every single day, and he has Lunchables, right? Lunchables used to be like this thing, and it was just like, man, like I'm different. Like I come from a different environment. Like I don't have that luxury. And then you start to separate yourself, and it's just like, why am I not good enough to get this? But in essence, it's like you don't even know what Johnny's mom's circumstance or like what they do. But like my mom is working, you know, she can't afford to do that or she doesn't have the time to do that. And just all these different things that just kind of happen. So I would just say that time, but that just like, that's before you really understand what society is like. And then when you start to grow older, you just see the societal norms that are just like, you know, here and you can't do anything about it. Like granted, right now, a lot of the conversation, and I'm fortunate for this platform and just different things to be able to speak about things like this. But before it was just like, no, it was shunned away. And it was just like we knew it what it was, but nobody was doing anything for it. And then it portrays into these industries and just these other things that people just grow up, you know, thinking this way, thinking they're better than or less than another individual. And when they get into different arenas, like that's just how it's gonna be and nothing's gonna change. Honestly, that was one of the reasons why I kind of left corporate. It's because I hated it. I hated it there. And that's one of the decisions that I made, and I hope that you can understand this as well. another reason why I went into entrepreneurship, because I didn't want to be fake. I wanted to be Desmond Wiggan. I didn't want to have to change for anybody. And a lot of times society tells you I have to be buttoned up or I have to change in order for somebody to respect me, when they should respect me for my consciousness. They should respect me for my character. They should respect me for who I am versus then what I look like, And so last thing I'll say about that is, and one of the things that's like so scary right now is that on any day, like I could have a suit on or I could have a hoodie on, right? And like any day, depending on my circumstance, like I could be one of the, the individuals that have, gotten killed just simply because of circumstance, like nothing to do with what I am, what I'm building, or anything like that. Like it's unfortunate, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. You use the term societal norms, and that's what's so frustrating. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on our team, and I've spent a lot of time just personally trying to just think through, what are the things that can change, and and there's a lot of symbolic things that are really important. People are talking about tearing down statues that are celebrating the Civil War and other kinds of things that those are symbolic and those are important. I don't want to diminish that, but really it's about foundational change. And in one area, maybe I'd like to take a little deeper dive. I know as a startup founder, one of the things that you've had to do that just about every company does is think about fundraising and access to capital. And one of the I'll call it a societal norm, but one of the normal business practices that you see in the venture capital community is a behavior to say, we're going to give some money to a company and there's a certain use for that funds. But almost never do you find a VC who says, yeah, an acceptable use for some of that early stage capital is for you as a founder to pay yourself. You really need to, just continue working in terms of sweat equity, in terms of, you have an equity payout coming sometime in the future that's going to be your reward. But you need to continue to work without any of this money actually going to you. And then at the same time, those VCs will say, but the most important thing in investment is the team. And there's a big discontinuity there. And I think what it perpetuates is making the investment the most important thing, not really making the team the most important thing. But in terms of continued structural racism, it means that those people that are privileged and affluent and can afford to not pay themselves can get investment, and those that can't. And it's behavior I don't know how to change, but I'm sure in our audience we have investors on the line, and I'll just throw that out there as something to think about. Are there ways to provide more equity simply in saying there's a reality that people got to pay some rent and buy some food, and why shouldn't some of that early investment, if we really care about that team, go to those team members? What was your experience, out on the road raising capital? You talked already about walking into a room where you felt that negative energy from the start of the meeting.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this one, but I think that going back to that narrative of like your back is just against the wall, it's kind of like you walk into conversations and like they don't expect anything from you, and it's just like one of the things that still hurts me, to be honest, is just like seeing founders that are white founders that have not worked half of what we have done and get outside capital like from investors. And one of the things that it's just like what more do I have to do in order to just at least get a conversation? Why are you so willing to take a risk? And granted, I take out of I think a lot of investors have their their industries that they like and their products and different things, so that's one thing. But I think half of the battle is still just like the individuals that you're pitching to do not look like me. And so like I feel like a lot of times we're just automatically discounted because there's a lot of what I pull in my pitch, and not even just pitch, like when we think about just sit down conversations with investors, I'm coming from like data that is driven from like my community or like things that I'm a part of. And like if you don't relate from where I come from, like it's just a miss. And it's just like what I'm saying is just completely foreign. And we ran into a lot of hurdles. I think a lot of things that I've heard as well and been a part of is some of the questions that minority founders are asked and scrutinized on. The white founders don't have the same type of hurdle that they have to like articulate and like kind of come up with something about. And it's just like, man, sometimes I'm in pitch competitions, I'm like, wow. And I see that very, very profoundly with women founders as well. Like I've been in atmosphere where I'm like, man, like they would never ask a guy founder that. And it's just like, it's sickening. And so like we got to the point for us, it was just like, man, we were knocking on doors, trying to get this capital. You know, in one hand, we're early stage, right? I get it. You know, everybody is, and you know, there's that defense, which is fine. But it's just like we had to figure out for ourselves, and that's honestly, I'm so glad that we went the way that we went because what we were able to prove through a crowdfunding campaign is that we had a community that supported us, and they supported us financially. They supported us with money, like lumps of a lot of money that allowed us to raise, you know, in a matter of like 6 weeks. And we had tapped into this untapped community of individuals that supported us because of what we've done as founders, you know, our product and different things like that. And it's just like some of the things that come along with like being an early stage company is just like, dang, if I was able to raise money from them, like I'm pretty sure they would support the product as well. I'm pretty sure they would spread the word as well. And it's just like, why wouldn't you take a chance now on an individual or a company that has proven out they could figure it out for themselves? Because crowdfunding is just, man, you ask our team, like it's just us. And it's just like the advisors that we have like involved with this. And besides that, it's nobody else. It's everything literally weighs on us, and we were able to prove that we were able to raise capital, and now we're able to do even some really cool things with like a mobile application and a new kiosk machine and different things like that. But it's just like we had to do all this in order to get somewhat of attention from, you know, VCs and stuff like that. And then on another note, just, you know, outside of my company, I feel like if you're a VC and or a fund and you're not allocating 25% of your investment to minority companies just off of the strength because you know that they're struggling, like what does that say about you? What does that say about your fund? And like those are the type of pressures that need to be put on these funds and these VC companies. But not only that, you think about and I was talking to a friend and he used this scenario. He was saying how it's not just capital, it's network and it's access. I think a lot of times individuals, not just funds, but like advisory and mentorship, you know how like one call of like, hey man, I have a buddy and his son, you know, just graduated, we'll just say NC State, has a really good idea in solar, we'll just say that. And hey, I have a buddy in my network that runs a solar company that has a opportunity to partnership. That simple connection can literally change the entire landscape of this kid's, you know, entire company and to entire trajectory. And it's just like I wish I had that access, you know, but again, I'm not in that network, I don't have that relationship, and I have to fight so much more harder to kind of get in the room, and I have to fit this mold in order to be comfortable enough to where I can now have a capital conversation. And then when I have that, I get scrutinized way more than the average founder. And it's just like, we know that's the struggle. And like, again, these are the conversations that happen throughout the minority founder circle. I've been a part of these conversations, and I'm pretty sure I'm leaving some stuff out, to be honest, but those are just some of the things that come top of mind and just the unfortunate hurdles that we've been having to go through as well.
So first of all, I do want to say congrats. I don't know if our whole audience knows, but if I'm not mistaken, you are the first company to have successfully done equity crowdfunding in North Carolina on the platform that you used, the crowdfunded the platform. So congratulations on that, first of all.
Thanks.
I think that, again, if you look at what are some of the structural problems in our society, you know, there are these rules in place to be an investor at all. In a traditional sense, you have to be accredited, which means you essentially have to be a rich person to do that. And the platform that you used enabled an entire community to come together. And I know that there are a lot of people listening in right now thinking, how can I help? And I would advise keep an eye out for other companies that might take this alternative investing path, where you can put your money where your mouth is and invest in a company like BatteryXchange. So congrats on that. You talked about the network, and that's really important. Um, having people that can open doors for you, that's a big part about what RIoT does, is we trying to run an ecosystem to help people to connect to partners, to collaborators, to advisors, to mentors. You mentioned your family as some of the folks that inspired you, that maybe were role models. Where else did you seek advice and mentorship and guidance, knowing that a lot of those doors were closed? How did you overcome that barrier?
I think I am decently well at building relationships. So I've always been like a risk taker and just a go-getter. I remember like in it was my junior year of undergrad, and this guy came out and spoke. And literally, I was trying to figure out where I was going to land in business. And so I had the initiative of just like, man, let me go into like sales, finance, all these different realms and kind of learn. And so, like, when I see somebody that I feel like I want to learn from, and potentially build from and connect with, like, I just go out and try and connect with them. Like now, it's easy to do it on LinkedIn. Used to you had to just build a relationship versus via conversation with them. But I've had amazing people in my life, whether it be coaches within track and field. I feel like those models of allowing me to see that I had this grit and I had this potential to dig deeper versus what my physical or mental capability was. I started building relationships with them, and that in essence translated to what I do in business now. And then most recently, I think just in different mentorship programs that are available, like for one in Charlotte, there's like Innovate Charlotte, like different things like that. And then the different accelerators that you get access to, it's come along the way. But honestly, it's just been, you hear somebody talk or you see somebody on something and it's just like, man, that's what I need. That's the knowledge I need. Like, let me, and we call it like shooting your shot. Like, let me shoot my shot, see if there's a way, there's synergy. And I think the beauty of what I've learned is, especially people with tenure, they're always looking for that person that they could nurture to be like them or be better than them. And so once I started to realize that, I started to be more open and reach out to people regardless of what they look like or if they didn't look like me. And I think that's something that I would like recommend founders or just entrepreneurs of any age to kind of do. Just reach out.
A clear theme that is coming through for me is that you had to work 5 times harder. You were scrutinized 10 times as much. You are doing the one reaching out to others. And there are a lot of folks, I think, particularly now when energy is high, and I hope this energy sustains. I hope this isn't just a news cycle activity with the protests and desire for change and such. But for folks that are saying, well, gosh, how can I start to meet halfway? How can I reach out and find African-American founders or engage this community and find ways to help? What are some thoughts that you have on, most of the action for change really needs to come from the white folks? I think you've already described you're doing enough. What are, I guess, some of your thoughts there and ideas?
One, first be ready, right? So remember I talked about like, man, me walking into a room, me pitching, and it's like 90% white dudes. If you can get to the point of understanding that you doing that same thing, as far as like, man, even for you, Tom, like you getting into an environment and being amongst an accelerated group that is minority focused or something like that, and just really talking to them and feeling that energy, but again, little by little, just getting more comfortable in that space, I think that says a lot. So I think there's organizations that are out here fighting, and have been fighting to bridge this gap. Again, some of them I know of is just kind of locally within Charlotte, like Black Tech Interactive, but there's like Black in Tech, and so, and I think man, what's this space? There's a space out of Raleigh. I just forgot the name of it. It's like a co-working space, and a lot of people have done. The Black Wall Street has done some things out there. Just slips my mind, but or actually it's in Durham. But step outside. Like I think now that this conversation is like brought to light, there are doors to, in essence, build these relationships. The individuals that are writing these articles, the individuals that are doing these posts, somewhat reach out and be like, where are your communities? When do you meet? And then be a part of that and be intentional of that. And I think the other thing, and that's just like the one off, right? Like that's individuals on this call that, really care to be intentional on getting into those spaces. But I think another thing that helps is being intentional on challenging the individuals that are in your communities, whether it be your churches, whether it be your community organizations or whatever it is. And when they have conversations that alter this new narrative of like just kind of getting into the space, or like bringing up some racist comment or something like that, challenge them and let them know that it's wrong. Because the more and more that you can do that, a lot of times they're the ones that kind of are in charge in some arena. Like those are the policy changers. And like the more and more you can challenge them when they get into their environment, maybe they'll say like, man, you know what? Tom said something about just this whole racial divide. And, I finally woke up and like now I'm gonna do something about it. And I think like those are some of the things that you can do. One of the things that I will say, and so like it's a gift and a curse. The conversation's relevant, or like popular now, but it's just like a month from now, a year from now, is it still going to be that intentionality and eagerness to get into these, like intersect these different sides to a certain extent? And like if there is, that's good. And I just want to make sure that it's pure of heart when you're trying to reach out to these individuals. Because one of the things, and I don't knock it at all, because I feel like a lot of white people don't know what to do right now, and it's okay. So one of the things that happened to me every single day, like literally since this whole thing has come about, is somebody reaches out via email or LinkedIn, and I've been talking about it the entire day, and they reach out on a guilty, like I feel like they feel some type of guilt. And the thing is, like, we kind of know, like, again, it's energy. I know, like, Tom, like, you've never judged me for me being a black man or anything. Like, it's just a feeling. Like, you're just always open. We've had some deep conversation. And it's just like, you're not one that has to defend, the way you feel during this time. And so, like, I know that that's just like the feeling that you want to do, but I don't know if that necessarily helps. I think what helps is just like, a lot of people do this as well. Like, how can I help? Again, how can I be a part of these communities? How can I be a part of these conversations? Because every ecosystem, every community is different. One size doesn't fit all. There's different things that are happening in Durham and different demands that might be completely different from Charlotte. But at the end of the day, if your intentionality is to kind of help Black people kind of level the playing field or get in the game type of thing, you'll figure out a way. I think there's always a way to get into the space, if again, if there's that genuine intentionality to do something about it.
Yeah, actions obviously speak louder than these conversations. I think you need both at some level, but at Riot, we always talk about having a bias towards action. Try something. Maybe it's as simple as the lean startup approach that we teach in the accelerator program. That you make a hypothesis, you try and test that first piece of the hypothesis, you see if it starts to make a difference. If so, you lean into it. If not, you pivot and you try something else. But you can't just talk about different things. You have to actually get out there and test and do.
And it's going to be uncomfortable, like, because it's tense. Literally, Tom, I've never been able to say like white person on a virtual or any type of call, but like now that we're talking black and white, and the uncomfortability is getting out, and it's just like a little bit more just regular. Like we got to get through that, and then we're gonna get to where like now I feel comfortable walking into a space literally in the last 2 weeks. And like I take my dog for a walk or like to different parks and stuff like that. And I might have to pop up at a grocery store. There has never been that many, white people that have like intentionally gone out and sought out and said hello and just see how I was doing. I used to just get passed by, right? And it's just like, man, it took all this just for you guys to care about me and just say hello. And it was just like, dang, like it sucks. but I'm glad that it happened. You know, like I'm glad that there's somewhat of a respect. I'm glad that people are bending over backwards to like make sure I feel like that I'm human, you know, but I used to live this way and just not feel human at times. Like it's just like, dang, like I'm here and like I'm irrelevant type of thing. But you know,
Yeah.
it took a lot.
I think it can be good too to remember that, I guess, creating better relationships and working together better doesn't necessarily mean like that I need to suddenly be a black person or you need to be a white person, right? You know, I remember a time we were having dinner some time ago at a restaurant. We both ordered chicken and waffles, and the waiter came over and I said I wanted white meat on my chicken. You said you want dark meat, and we both kind of had a laugh about that.
Right.
Like, okay, that's
Hilarious.
stereotype coming forward, but that's not the point. The point is that we're out dining together, right? And how do people just feel really comfortable in their ability to do that? And I think the first step is just to do it, you know, to get together and have these conversations, and then you know, figure out things you can do together. So I want to talk about one other topic, and then I want to bring in Aubrey and see what kind of questions we have from the audience. But you know, we've talked about BatteryXchange quite a bit. You have done quite a bit since COVID-19 just in the Charlotte area. Tell us a little bit about Recharge Charlotte and what you're trying to accomplish there and how that came about.
Yeah, so it came about from just like on the brinks of COVID and things that I was struggling with. I feel like my mental health was declining, and that's something I've been intentional on over the past few years. I feel like my physical fitness was just because I wasn't at the gym. I just wasn't in my normality. And then like again, I didn't know what was gonna go on with like funding and the whole VC world. So man, it was just kind of on my heart, talk to my team, and it was just like, yo, let's start having conversations about important things that like founders or entrepreneurs or individuals that even work 9 to 5 can like relate to. So we started having these like, you know, it was every 2 weeks conversations around mental health and like things that you can do because I think not only just as a human being, that's something that needs to be you know, paid attention to, but especially in my community, that's something that isn't intentionally brought up or there's no structure in place for the mental state. And the mental state, I always say, leads up to like your full optimized level. And it's just like I can't be at my peak performance if like I'm stressing or like I'm worrying. And so what I've been, you know, blessed to have is like an amazing network of individuals that are leaders in that space, therapists, you know, different individuals in the healthcare arena. So trainers, nutritionists, like different things like that. In order to have a conversation about things that we can do throughout COVID, in order to just make it through, and then also like be better prepared after COVID. So it was an initiative we started, and like that was just to propel, you know, to make sure Charlotte was going to be able to bounce out of this. Like, I don't think like we sometimes realize how impactful this has been and how emotionally rocky. I mean, I've talked to founders that have had to shut down. I've talked to, you know, friends that have lost their jobs. And it's just like, man, how are you still breathing? And like people have gone through depression. And so, like, for me, it was just like, because I've been at that low moment. I remember in China, I remember coming back and starting BatteryXchange and like some of the risk I had to take and being depressed because I couldn't just kind of get through. And I think the only reason some of the reasons why I was able to get through was one, you know, my spiritual connectedness like to God, but also, you know, I picked up therapy and like I got a therapist and like that's something that I'm a huge advocate of because you need to be able to voice things out. I think, especially like as males or like whatever it is, we struggle with that. And I wanted to just make a lot of these conversations within mental health and like, you know, just be normal so that in essence we could change the trajectory of how we feel and how we express how we feel. And so that was kind of the root essence of it. And then a bunch of people just joined in, a bunch of people just loved it. And so, you know, right now I'm at this weird context because like I do want to continue the conversations, but I also think that there's like a deeper especially with the injustices you know, kind of coming to light of just like those conversations need to be had. And so I still have to like run a company, but also like attend to like the community as well. And so like I'm trying to figure out what that balance is like in the future. But I'm definitely here as an advocate and somebody that's gonna try and give my community tools, try and give individuals that aren't in my community tools just to be, again, at that optimized level. And in Battery Exchange, we said live life charged. Whatever you got to do in order to live life charged.
Yeah, well, certainly appreciate all of that. I think that's part of really is making you a trailblazer, is to have that kind of energy to focus not just on the company, but on the entire community and on the entire life of the people in the community. We talk about work-life balance and those kind of things. When everybody's working from home, there's probably never been a time in our history when work-life balance is more muddied than it is right now. But maybe that's a bad term. Your work and your life are part of the same you, and so they maybe need to all be thought of more holistically. And so I think some of the work you're doing there is really quite exciting. So thanks for that. Aubrey, we've had you on the line since the start. Maybe I'll ask you to jump in and introduce yourself. Aubrey Ubo is the partner of Desmond in BatteryXchange. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Desmond. I really appreciate, the opportunity that you guys at Riot have provided Battery Exchange and all other entrepreneurs of, diverse backgrounds. I think our cohort was very special to me because we got a chance to, meet different people, different ideas, different backgrounds. And then, for us, we had interesting trips to Raleigh with our uh, colleague Chris, who would drive his Tesla, and we would take turns driving it. And it was just, a different experience just to kind of do little things like that to build camaraderie and, that friendship. And he actually came in on board as an investor as well. So I think, the Riot program for just being a genuine, partner to us, a genuine, mentor to us and helping us move forward, push the needle forward. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys.
Well, thanks. Do you have any, I guess, just high-level thoughts or perspective on this whole conversation that we've had that you want to add in before we ask Caroline to read out some questions?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, just kind of feeding off of what Desmond said, I think having conversations like this with minority founders, people of color, I think these type of forums introduce, different intellects and ideas to kind of change what's going on in our communities. I think it's that time. We've been, preaching and marching and protesting and asking and looking for ways for lives to be better. And I think now is just with our generation and with social media and our phones being so useful in times like this, we see the prevalence of battery exchange, but also the need for other founders to be recognized for their hard work and initiatives in their specific communities. I think everybody has an opportunity to be successful and get the right people around them to kind of push forward. But there are also underlining issues or things that we can't even see that stop us from moving forward. And I think, like I said, just opening the doors to these conversations.
I'm not sure if I lost Aubrey or not.
Can you hear me?
Now I got you.
I can hear Aubrey, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My AirPods sometimes mess up, but yeah, just to conclude, I would just say, just opening the doors for conversations like this, giving people the opportunity to showcase what they're able to do and not be judged by, their color, their how they look or their race. I think that just excludes a lot of people who do a lot of good work, and I think that's what we need to focus on, and just be more open to new ideas and people. So in a nutshell, you guys did a great job. I think all the questions and the responses that we all got, we kind of hit it on the head.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Caroline, what kind of reactions do we have on our audience right now?
Yeah, we just have a lot of great feedback, that the discussion was great and very timely. We do have a couple questions here. The first one is, what can new bootstrap founders do to help support the Black community? Right now, we're actively looking into talent at HBCUs and supporting Black-owned businesses when we outsource work, but we realize there is so much more to be done.
I I think one of the things that Tom had mentioned as far as like well, and I talked about just being in the space. I feel like the opportunities are gonna come. You just got to be present. Like, these connections to the HBCUs are like huge. Like that's first and foremost. Something that I commend that effort. But it's gonna take time. There's no like, hey, this is what you do and it fixes everything. It's just like over the next year, just be intentional on a part of these conversations, a part of the environments where the people hear what the needs are, and then if you have the resources to be able to help them, I think it'll organically come. But I think a lot of times we are so used to quick fixes that this is not going to be a quick fix. And I'm not even just reference to your, comment or question, but that's a lot I'm hearing now. It's just like, what can we do? I think it's still to be sorted out. I think there's some like top line things. We talk about connections, resources, capital, and stuff like that. But there's going to be things that come about in the next few years, and it's just going to be like, man, I think that we can do that. And I think that's the other thing too. It's just like if you see a fit, don't be scared to take the chance. To fill that void if you see an opportunity. And I think that's what was missing for so long. It's just like people that are willing to take a chance and extend themselves to be a resource. And it seems like you're an individual or a company that wants to do that. So I think it's going to organically happen over time.
Thank you, Desmond. This next question is, the U.S. has set the benchmark for innovation. Do you see China taking leadership for innovation? And what needs to be added to the culture in the U.S. to further cultivate innovation?
I'm biased because I worked a lot, over there, but I totally think that, you know what, we need to, first of all, we need to come together as a race, right? And then that's how we come together as a people to be able to even think about challenging any other country in innovation because we're so divided. I think one of the things that allow China to prosper is they're kind of all on one accord, good or bad, whatever you think about the, political system or whatever, like everybody marches to the same beat. So one of the things that is kind of, cool, I think, is like they have like 2025 initiative, they have like a 2030, 2040, 2050 plan of where they want to be. And it doesn't matter if you're in the East or in the West or the North or the South, we're all marching to that one direction. And everybody just has, yeah, it's just everybody kind of falls along the same type of narrative so that the story in essence will be told the same way. And honestly, we aren't built like that because to get too far into it, but it's like every 8 years, we're going the opposite way on a political realm, which that comes with innovation, that comes with capital, that comes with these injections and policies and different things. So honestly, I don't feel like we even built to because that's the thing. It's just like if these other countries were ever able to get the resources to move forward, they already had the togetherness to be able to be successful. And we're gonna have to figure out how to get together.
I'll add to that just quickly. I've spent a lot of my career traveling internationally, and my high level observation is I think there are many nations, and China is one of them, that are really aspiring just to kind of prove themselves and to show that they can do amazing things just for the purpose of doing amazing things. And once upon a time in our US history, we were that way as well. When I think about things like the space race and other examples, and we are, I think, overly focused today on just profitability and money as the objective rather than money being the tool that enables you to get to other kinds of objectives. So that's just that's probably a whole other conversation for another time, but that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you, guys. The next question/comment. Congrats on the baby, Desmond. What a wonderful news to share. As a parent, I think quite a bit about the future. When you look forward, what do you hope the world looks like when your baby is your age? And what do you think are some steps to get there?
I think, just, yeah, and we're having a son. And so I just want him to be able to walk in a room and it's not a I have a dream speech, but like just not be judged like off of the strength of like what he looks like. But I feel like, you know, It's going to be interesting to see these kids now that are growing into a space where, let's like, not only are Black people saying like, you know, Black Lives Matter, or just, there needs to be rights for everybody, fairness. Like, their parents and like white people are saying that as well. So I think that honestly, we already see a shift that's going to take place, and some of the efforts that we're doing, even this conversation. What if we never see it in our generation, but it's like the next generation, just for them to be better off? So those are some of the things. And then, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I just want to see for like my, my son coming up. And I'm pretty sure Aubrey might have some to share about this as well, because he has a daughter.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I echo everything that Desmond said. My daughter's 5 going on 6, so I want her to be able to experience life, enjoy it, be around friends and like-minded individuals who kind of propel the narrative of innovation. I know she's very into learning different languages and being a part of the science initiatives at her school and different projects like that. I just want her to be able to learn as much as she can, and not be judged by her last name or her economic status or whatever the case may be, but by who she is as a person. I think that's what matters most, and you get the most fulfillment in life by that.
And there's a lot of urgency, right? She's almost 6 years old, and we just talked about that. By the time somebody's in middle school, we start to see some of this, right? It's important that, to the point Desmond made earlier, that we have an urgency that is sustained to make change. That this can't be something that we're talking about for a month or two, and then we move on to whatever is the new thing in the news. This needs to be something really sustained so that she can continue to have that innocence, because it becomes reality that we're all equal. I don't have the answer to how to do that. Obviously, I think Desmond's right. This is going to take a long time, but I'll just remind that next generation is here.
Yeah,
It's not that far away.
yeah, that's true.
Desmond, Aubrey, great job on your crowdfunding campaign. The method that you guys use for fundraising works well for underserved communities. What are your recommendations for others that want to have a successful investment crowdfunding raise?
Do it. What I think we're getting into this space, especially like the communities we come from, of individuals that have, they're making a little bit more money than like their parents or grandparents and stuff like that, and they're getting a little bit more savvy and intentional on, wealth building. And I think when you start to kind of propel into that and introduce new ways for them to do it based out of the traditional route, it's very intriguing. And one of the things that I think we realized was, there's a lot of people that want to become investors, they're just not educated on it. So as long as you just educate them on how this world is different, because there's this intentionality to like building wealth and creating legacy and being a part of and supporting a community. I think if you have that a part of your mission, which it has always been for us, everything else as far as like influencing your network and your community to become investors in your company is just going to happen. To be honest.
Thanks, Desmond. Aubrey, did you have anything to add?
Oh, no, I think Desmond hit it on the head, and my daughter's right here.
Yeah, me
Asking
too.
for
That was awesome.
asking for some food.
She knows somebody talking about it.
Absolutely. So the last question I have for you guys today, as two individuals who participated in the RIoT Accelerator program and who are currently sponsors of the RIoT ecosystem, what would you like to see the RIoT team do?
It's a great question.
Right, and putting me on the spot. But I think that, it, and I'm gonna say this, but like, I mean, there's still more to be done. I don't have the answer for that. But I feel like what you guys are already doing is a lot. I'm not gonna say enough, because there's always more, but it's more than other people are doing. I mean, I don't really know of many accelerators that kind of are having these conversations, and honestly, it came from, and Aubrey said it too, it came from the start. Like our whole cohort was diverse. The way that you guys like received us, there was never any, I never felt a tense moment of just like me being a Black founder, I have to do all this stuff. It was always like a warm feeling. So I would just say to continue to do that and really be organic and genuine. And, Tom, you've done a great job. I mean, I love everybody on the team, but it's just something that obviously says about you that you're able to attract these people that kind of fall into this culture. And you guys are very intentional on it, because I've seen you guys have conversations about what you can do, but just continue to have those internal conversations. Continue to be woke, continue to know what's going on in the minority communities, by having these type of conversations. I'm here, Aubrey's here. Again, I think even something we said earlier, be intentional in being in those rooms that are having these conversations, and you're really going to understand where you fit and where you need to go.
Super. Any feedback you've got, Aubrey?
Yeah, I was gonna say just a little bit of what Desmond said. I think opening the forum to more conversations. I think that's just the narrative right now. If you don't talk to people, how would you know? Like you go to your therapist. If you don't say anything, how is he going to help you, right? So I think keeping those open doors for conversations, and letting everybody be as open as possible. I think talking to a friend, and when the whole George Floyd incident happened, and how she had to cover her emotions up at work because she works at a all white, government agency. So she felt weird, expressing, or when they had like team meetings about situations about, race and things like that, she didn't want to say anything too off the grid, and it could potentially put her or help, she will be seen in a different light, So I think for us as African Americans, we're forced to like cover up how we feel or the emotions that we've built up. But I think now is the time for us to just be more open, and, as you guys as counterparts, just being open to our feedback, and then building that dialogue of how can we get past this? I know this is something that's on your mind. I know there's something on your heart. How can we just, as a community, work together as one to move forward? And I think that eases the gap or the divide a little bit, whereby we can just be open. I think that's just the hardest part about this whole thing, is a lot of people aren't receptive to the openness of what's going on. Is like a wound. You just want to keep the Band-Aid on, but once you take it off, you feel that burn. I think that's the only way you heal, is feeling the burn and letting the air hit it, letting, Neosporin get on it, and then you just help it, get better. And I think that's how you move forward. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's all I got.
Cool. Well, thank you both
Analogies.
for joining. Really, really important discussion. We're going to keep having this discussion. I'm excited to say next week, I promise that last question wasn't a plant, but we do have another discussion we're going to do next week, and we're going to hear a couple of voices from the corporate world that have been involved in diversity inclusion efforts in larger established organizations, and hear, I think, some of the same frustrations that we heard from you, Desmond, in terms of your early part of your career. But we also want to open up next week into a little bit more of a town hall format, where we're going to engage everybody in the audience in some small group breakout discussions. And so we'll hope everybody will join for that as we continue this dialogue, as we continue to search for concrete, actionable steps that we can all do to support the community. But again, thanks, Desmond and Aubrey, for joining today, for sharing your insights, for sharing your experience, your successes, your pains. And we're always here. Anytime we can help, please reach out.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to our sponsors that make this happen. And we'll see you all on the other side.
All righty.
All right.
You guys have a great day.
Take care.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.